Today is gonna be a big episode. We officially finished season 1. We're gonna get through stats. We're gonna get through awards, the playoffs, the draft lottery, and then the final draft preview ahead of the offseason, which will be next episode. A lot to get through. Let's hop into it. MVP of this season is Luka Doncic. Looks like he's going to be just as overpowered as he was in 2K23. Victor Wembanyama wins Rookie of the Year with 16, 9, 2, 1, and 2.5 blocks a game. Did not shoot well, though. Chris Paul wins Sixth Man of the Year. Very interested to see how that works for Golden State in real life this year. Giannis is your D-boy. 2.3 blocks, 1.4 steals. Talen Horton-Tucker wins Most Improved Player of the Year. I know Jaden Hardy was second place for that award, so we had the top 2 vote getters there. It was basically all players from the expansion teams. And then Gilgeous-Alexander wins your Clutch Player of the Year. Executive, they actually show the team now, so I don't have to just never know who actually won Executive of the Year. Now it's time to go through the All-NBA teams here and go through their stats. Triple-double average here for Jokic and Embiid with a really awesome season. 32 points nearly per game with 5 and 6 for SGA. Ja Morant heads the NBA second team. 31 points per game, 6 and 8. Shot 54% nearly from the field. Trae Young, 28 points per game, 10 assists. He averaged a double-double, as did James Harden. Didn't get quite as many points as Trae. LaMelo, 22 and 8 with 6 rebounds as well. And then LeBron still going strong, 24, 7 and 7, shooting just under 52%. Third team, Devin Booker, 26, 5 and 6. 22, 6 and 6 for Butler. Steph, 29 points per game, 5 and 5 nearly. Really good shooting splits for him. And then Dame Lillard, of course, traded to Miami in this series the same day he was traded to Milwaukee in real life. But he makes the All-NBA third team, and then Anthony Davis does as well. All defensive first team. I'm so sick of Luka making an all-defensive team in this series, man. In 2K. 2K loves Luka way more than he deserves, if I'm gonna be honest with you. Who do we put here? I feel like Drew Holiday is a good defensive guard. Just like seeing Luka get all defense and MVP. No, I'm sorry. Luka's really, really good. He's not one of the 4 best defensive guards in the league. He's not even close to that. So SGA, you could argue, isn't either, but yeah, I don't know. I guess we could put Jaylen Brown here. There we go. Get some actual guys that are known for their defense on the all defensive team. It's just way too, hey, do you get steals? And it's not about like, do they actually play defense? With 2K all defensive team. It's hard to quantify in a video game how well they defend, though. So they kind of just have to use steals. So it's not like... It's hard to blame them for being the way that they are, but I still will. Anyway, Wemby, Brandon Miller, Chet, Scoot, and Asar are your all-rookie first team. And then it looks like there was only 8 rookies playing this year. So the other guys there will be in the second team. So there you have it for the awards of this season. Let's go ahead now and just look at our team's individual stats. Of course, we had one award winner with THT winning the most improved player. And we'll go through this. Johnson led us in minutes, Hartenstein next. We had quite a few guys getting over 20. In terms of points, THT led us there with Hardy, and then a pretty big drop-off, only 4 players in double digits total, although Moody and Robinson were both very, very close. Nobody averaged even 8 rebounds on the team. Of course, alongside of looking at these stats, we're going to be talking about surprise and disappointments of the year. I think both are very, very clear to me. Assists, not a good assist team. And of course, we'll be looking at team stats, how we ranked as a team compared to the rest of the league later. And as you can see, we're not going to be very high in assists. And so Jalen Johnson being second on the team in turnovers is something you don't like to see. He also led us in fouls. In terms of field goal percentage, we were led by Isaiah Hartenstein, but 49 from a guy who only shoots inside isn't all that great, if I'm being honest. I think THT and Moses Moody are the guys that you're most pleasantly surprised with here. Duncan Robinson, pretty low, but he only shoots threes. And just kind of low in general for the team. Watanabe would lead us in three-point percentage, but Moses Moody right behind him. I think Moses Moody, for me, just being one of the more efficient guys, despite being the lowest rated guy on the squad, is going to win him Surprise Player of the Year. Hopefully that will boost him up in terms of being able to get some badges and obviously having a higher overall ceiling. I was mostly impressed with Moody this year. I think there were a lot of young guys that were up for the award. I mean, THT winning most improved player, that certainly puts you on the list, but I just think his assist to turnover ratio for a point guard was pretty low. And so Moses Moody will be our year one surprise player of the year. Pretty much doubled his point outputs and was just one of the most efficient players on the team, again, despite being no badges and the lowest rated player in our rotation. And so I think that is enough to win him that award. He also started for us by the end, and he kept that efficiency up. Our disappointment of the year is going to be Isaiah Hartenstein. Wasn't terribly inefficient, but I had some trouble getting this award until I kind of thought about it some more, and I just thought back to this season. When, did we see one good Hartenstein game? Like, oh, wow, Hartenstein was good in this game. And of course, in our last game, he was actually getting picked on defensively relentlessly. And he only averaged 7.4 rebounds despite getting, 0.9 more rebounds than last year despite getting a lot more minutes. And I just think that's the only reason I drafted him to be our starting center, is that he had really good rebounding stats, and he just didn't actually show that in the year. Couldn't even get to 8. And so for that reason, he will be our disappointment of the year. His potential would be going down -3. Now, we were the worst team in the league by 5 wins. Taking a look and shifting now to team stats, we scored the fewest points in the league by about 1.3 over the second worst team. We also allowed the most points, so we were worst in both. So obviously our difference is going to be 6 worse than anybody else, which is really bad. 76ers would have the best difference in the league. In terms of how many attempts we were taking, we had the third fewest field goal attempts, which means we were having some slow pace and also turning the ball over. Field goal percentage, the Pelicans would lead there. A couple teams over 50%. We were third worst in terms of shooting the ball total. In terms of 3-point, we shot the second most threes in the league. The Pelicans shot the fewest. In terms of our percentage, though, 26 is going to be one of the highest things we rank here, but having the 26%, but taking the second most in the league, not the combination you love. We took the fourth fewest free throw attempts in the league, and we shot the worst at them. So if you're super terrible at taking them, I'm not mad at not getting them. Still, though, with our field goal percentage being low, you'd still want more free throws. So getting some people that can draw some fouls going to be something that we look for. We really need everything, which is what we're going to talk about today. Offensive rebound percentage, again, was going to hope that Hartenstein would help us better. It might be a little bit unfair to Hartenstein because in our 2K23 franchise, we had Jalen Duren, and kind of comparing him to Jalen Duren, who single-handedly made us, a good rebounding team at times. Might be a little bit unfair, but honestly, I'm not even saying he should have been Jalen Duren. I'm just saying he should have been better, But of course, we had the fewest assists in the league. Getting some passing on the team is going to be a priority. Steals, we were low. Blocks, we were actually only slightly below average. So not bad on the blocks. We led the league in turnovers per game. Second in the league with most fouls per game. The Celtics fouled the least. But looks like we weren't terrible in getting points off of turnovers. Hey, we were top 10 in something, and it was getting points off turnovers in the league. But it's all really close spread across the league, so it's not like a super great thing to be proud of. Second chance points, not great there. In terms of bench, we were actually really good. We were second in bench points in the league, and that kind of matches with what I saw in our spotlight games. I mean, I liked watching the bench play. I think, with Moody and Zaire Williams and Jaden Hardy, those guys were fun to watch, and I think they were pretty productive. And so we had the highest bench point percentage in the league, and that's no surprise. We kind of had a not great starting lineup, but our bench was at least competitive against other benches. We were the only team to allow more than 50%, and nobody else allowed more than 48.6%. Team shot the three better than us than they did against any other team. We were awful. Only won 15 games. I didn't need to show you all those stats for you to see that we were awful. All you needed to see was our record. We couldn't even win 20% of our games this year. Part of that is the simulator difficulty. I like the simulator difficulty being very high so that it's harder for me to build a really good team. It's going to make this project a long one, and I am fine with it. I like the challenge of a long project, and it's not just going to take, a draft or two to get this team on track. It's going to take multiple seasons. We're going to have multiple good draft picks, and not only are we going to need top-end talent, we're going to need depth to overcome this simulator difficulty. Let's get now to the playoffs, where we see the play-in results, where it will be Sacramento and Utah in the West making it, and then Atlanta and New York in the East. If we get any Game 7s, I'll simcast them, but for the most part, we'll just quickly go through this playoff run, see where teams are ending up. Looks like we got a couple 3-0s, and maybe a series or two that's going to end up being really close. And we got 3 Game 7s here in round 1, something that is not particularly common. Let's go ahead and simcast these Game 7s. Bucks and the Heat. I think both of these teams are teams that expect to be going past the first round. Of course, the team that we traded Dame to in this series versus the team that actually has Dame. And Dame and Jimmy Butler are a little bit behind Giannis here. And this game is really close. Miami ahead, and they will eventually win it. Dame drops 40 in Game 7. Only had 1 assist, but he shot 26 free throws, and Jimmy Butler shot 20. What? That's nuts. Okay. Drew Holiday and Giannis both went for 25 plus, but you can see the disparity in free throws in a home game in Miami. Oof. That's some pretty big time home cooking, I think, in that Game 7 that pushed Miami over the edge. That's the biggest free throw disparity I think I've ever seen. Talking about 50 free throws between 2 players on one side and then 10 on the other from the star players. Boston absolutely shellacks Chicago for that Game 7. We got 1 more left here in the round. We got Phoenix and OKC. I think Phoenix is under more pressure to advance here. They've got the more win now squad. Of course, traded Bradley Beal for Jalen Brunson in this series. And they do go down in the first round with that star power. not enough to propel them past Oklahoma City Thunder. Gonna go now to the second round, see if we get any Game 7s here. Doesn't look like we're gonna be getting any. Maybe Philly Boston. The other three were done in 5 games or less. We might get one from Philly Boston. Boston in the second straight Game 7. Well, they go 2-0 in Game 7s. They absolutely demolished Chicago in their last Game 7. But Philly holding tight to a close lead, and they win by 1. I should have slowed it down there in the fourth quarter. Wow. Close game. Harden, Maxey, and Embiid each go for 25 plus, propelling Philly to a big-time victory over Boston. Tatum dropped 28, Tatum dropped 41, Jaylen Brown dropped 28 in the loss. Now for the conference finals. Philly, Cleveland in the East. We got Memphis, Dallas in the West. Both series are really good. We got a Game 7 in the East. And we'll see if we get a Game 7 in the West as well. Before that, let's get to this Game 7. Philly trying to go 2 straight series with a Game 7 win, and they're gonna do it. They absolutely are blowing past Cleveland here. Ends up only being 17, but it was a massive 40-plus point quarter from Cleveland to make this look even like it was a game at all. Now, we got Game 7 in the West. Both conference finals going to Game 7. You love to see it. Will this be a closer Game 7, though? It looks like it is. Teams trading leads. But now, the Grizzlies, off of a monster third quarter, will make it to the finals. Embiid and Durant are your conference finals MVPs for their respective sides. Now we've got the NBA finals. Can we get another Game 7? I feel like this is the most Game 7s I've seen in one single playoff run. And we do get a Game 7. Wow. Man, I would love to have, a year of playoffs as competitive as we've seen in this simulation. You don't get this many in real life, and you don't even usually get this many in 2K. It's been really awesome and competitive and fun to follow these playoffs this year, but this Game 7 was not competitive. The Philadelphia 76ers are your NBA champions. Turns out they can win a ring with this core around Joel Embiid after all. And then the last thing we've got in this video, and I think the thing that viewers are paying more attention to than anything else, we've got to get to the draft lottery, and then of course the draft preview. That's what really matters for our team. We've seen a lot of what's happening around the league, but let's get some attention onto the Nashville Sound. Got some things to do before we get to the draft lottery here, though. And that will start here with the player retirements. And LeBron James retiring after being second team All-NBA. I think we're going to force him to play one more year. Play at age 40, my guy. Everyone else, you could argue Chris Paul, he just won sixth man, but maybe he wasn't very happy that he's not a starter in his career anymore. So I think we'll let him retire. Here are your head coach retirements. I think we're going to override Popovich as well, just because he's had 1 year with Wemby. It's going to let him have 2. I think Carlisle as well will override. Chris Paul is the only one to make the Hall of Fame from this last class. Not, I guess, super surprised by that. And I imagine he'll get his jersey retired by at least the Clippers, maybe by some other teams. No, it will only be the Clippers that will retire his jersey. Had shorter stints after that with the Rockets, the Thunder, and of course the Suns. And then the Warriors to cap off his career. League meetings. everything was rejected. I think early on you want to reject most things anyway. Maybe later on we'll accept a couple of rule changes, but for now let's keep things the same. We've covered a lot of stuff in this episode. We covered, the playoffs. We covered the stats. We covered the awards. Surprise, disappointment of the year, all of that. We finally get to the moment I'm sure you've all been waiting for, the moment I've been looking forward to of this episode the most, and this is the draft portion of this episode. We'll be going through the lottery. I'll be giving my full draft preview. Got 32 players on our board. And that's just because that's the maximum amount I can put on my board. I'd probably have put more had they let me. But before we preview the drafts, let's find out just where we will be picking in it. Of course, we have this three-way tie for the number one odds in the league with the Rockets and the Pacers coming off the worst season in the league. Doesn't always equate to getting the best pick. I think we're guaranteed a top 5 pick. But as we know, I think the top 2 picks, I could go either way. Then after that, I really want a top 4 pick. If we end up picking 5th, I think there's a pretty steep drop off of who we're getting. So I'm praying for a top 2 pick. But let's see. I'll see you either when we get to the halfway point of the lottery or the first time we see somebody jump, whichever happens first. I'll see you then. Here we are. We're in the single digits. So far, no displacements in the lottery, which is good for us. The Sonics have lost their logo. And they keep the pick here. We probably lost our logo as well. Every time I manually save, not every time, but there's like a decent chance the expansion teams just lose their logos. It's a really weird glitch in 2K24. I've already had to redo our team branding like 2 or 3 times in this series. We're all the way at pick 5 here. Not a single team has jumped, which is really good for us. I'm gonna jinx it, and the Hornets are definitely about to jump, and they just did. But jumping from 5's not, like this massive jump. They are currently the favorites to get the number 4 pick, and they do. We've got a top 3 pick. Really, really, really want a top 2 pick. Please don't pick here. Please be the Pacers or the Rockets. Please, Pacers or Rockets. Yes! Okay, we have a top 2 pick. Do you pick number 1, though? That's the only way we can guarantee Sidney Lowry is getting the number 1 pick. This is the most boring lottery I've ever seen. And we win it! And we win it! Let's go! The lottery is ours. No logo, no care. We won the Sidney Lowry draft. It was always meant to be. Sometimes, the lottery just feels a little scripted. Like when the Pelicans traded away Anthony Davis and then won Zion. Same thing with, LeBron and Kyrie. There's just times, the Cleveland kid gets to go to the Cavaliers. Well, this time, the Tennessee kid gets to go to the Nashville Sound. Let's go, baby. I was really hoping when we imported Sidney Lowry into the class and I made him a guy from Tennessee. Obviously, my goal was to get him on the team. I honestly didn't think it was going to happen. I would never, force the results of the lottery or anything to make it happen, of course. And we have won the lottery. I would have been perfectly fine with the number 2 pick. As that gives you a prospect like freaking Darren Anthony, who's an awesome, awesome prospect himself. Who knows? Maybe we do still pick Darren Anthony. He's an 86 projected overall. Out of these 3, he's the one who I don't know what his overall is. I do know these guys because I imported them in the class. I will say one of them is wrong. So now it is time to preview the draft in full prior to the draft, which will be, of course, next episode. And of course, we've talked about these top 3. I'm not going to go super deep into them today, because if you want to see my full thoughts on them with the clips and everything, that was in episode 4. We will talk about them briefly, but my draft board is full. We have 32 players. It won't even let me add more, or else I probably would have. I've gone through and I've picked the 10 players that I wanted to talk about the most, whether because I thought they were very interesting or because I think there's a high likelihood that we end up drafting them with our other pick here in this draft. And so that's going to be what we preview. I think previewing all 32 of these guys would just take too long. Of course, when they get drafted, I'll talk about a lot of the guys that were on my board and what I thought of them. But let's go ahead and just take a quick look at the top guys in this class and where we have them. And of course, we won the number overall pick. That was for Sidney Lowry. And I think our scouts may be a little bit too high on him. I think the fact that he's from our region makes us very excited about what he could be. I don't think he's going to be quite as good as we see here with A+ mid-range, A+, 3, A+ defense, A+ potential. I don't think he's going to be quite that good, but he is an incredible prospect, a two-way prospect. With his length, he has the strength, he has the handle, he has the shooting. There's really not a hole that you can put in his game. He's not like going to be an elite finisher through traffic, but I don't think it's going to be like a problem area for Lowry. Not like the best rebounder or inside defender, but he's a 2 guard. I think he's more than adequate in these areas, and he's somebody that's very excited to take with the number 1 overall pick. A couple of the other guys that I imagine will go 2 and 3. I'm pretty confident Darren Anthony will go 2 here. Again, I think our scouts overrate his 3-point scoring a bit. His consensus 3-point scoring is B, and so I imagine it will be either maybe like B+ or something like that. I don't think the consensus is that wrong on his 3-point scoring, but incredible rebounder, really good interior defender, can score at all 3 levels offensively, can play make a bit for, a center for sure. Perimeter defense being a C is not bad at all either. Good athletes, not like, S tier athlete, but really, really good. Awesome IQ for a guy who's going to be, obviously in his rookie year. His potential is not quite as good though. It's at an A-, but he is projected to be an 86 overall. This is the one that I don't know. I know what Sidney Lowry's overall is because I imported him in the class. I know what Lynn Montgomery, who we'll talk about now, his overall is because I imported him in the class. And Lynn Montgomery, obviously an incredible defender, decent rebounder for power forward, maybe slightly below what you'd want, but incredible athletes, incredible IQ. Once again, he's going to make smart decisions. His potential at B+, I feel like our scouts are a little bit low on his upside. I like his upside more than our scouts do. And, not going to be a great scorer year 1, and maybe never like an elite scorer even down the road, but he's at a point where I think he can be very good. It might take him a couple more years. He's not as ready to go on the offensive side of the ball as these other 2 players are, but I think he's going to be the best defender, which could say something because Lowry and Anthony are both really good defenders. I think the top 3 of this class is very strong. However, as you see here, some rankings even have Dino Rancic above Lynn Montgomery. I think that is a mistake. His overall is far lower, and as is his badge situation. The other guys have at least 8 badges on all of them, and Lowry leads with 11. But Rancic only has 4. He's also 75 overall, but an S-tier athlete, and he's the first guy of the non-top 3 that we're going to preview, of course. What does he add? He adds S-tier athleticism. He adds as high of potential as anybody in the class. He's a 6'7" 2 guard. He's got good strength too, at 211 pounds. He's not too lean. My question: his weaknesses are just much more defined, and that's why he's a 75 overall compared to the other guys is 82. There's just a lot of D's here, and so yes, you could get somebody that after 3 years is on pace with the Montgomerys, the Anthonys, and the Lowrys, but it's for the first at least probably couple of years of their careers, Rancic is going to be a step below these guys, and that's why I think it's the A+ potential isn't worth it to put him above a guy like Lynn Montgomery, who's just so much better in the first couple of years. And like I said, it's possible that a guy like Rancic could eventually pass him, but I just think it's you're projecting there, and a lot of the NBA draft is projection, and so it's fair to do said projections. His athleticism is definitely helping him score inside the arc. His best attribute other than his athleticism is ability to score around the rim. He's going to be able to finish in traffic. He's going to be able to have the highlights on the inside. It's just kind of the more skilled aspects of a game, like your perimeter shooting, like your defense. Even like a defense, you'd think athleticism would help him out there. Maybe he is going to play above that D+ rating on his defense because of his elite athleticism and his really good length as a 2 guard. So I don't worry as much about a D+ defense with him as I would with somebody who's not great, athletically or with their size. But if we had the 4th pick and the first 3 guys were off the board, I would probably still take Rancic. I would just be a little bit sad that I missed out on the top 3. I think he is a tier below, and so the fact that he's ranked at number 3 by some is a mistake in my eyes. Now, the first guy that I am very high on in this draft compared to consensus is Monty McDaniel, and he's just the guy that I look at this player card, I see 77 overall, and I'm like, this guy's really good at basketball. Like, what is his weakness from this player card? Like, he can't rebound? That's fine. He's a 2 guard. Once again, he's a combo guard. And that's his weakness, is his rebounding. I can get rebounding from the other positions very, very easily. He can score inside really well at the same level that we just saw from Dino Rancic, who's projected to go 3rd or 4th in this draft. Mid-range scoring, he's fine. He's not elite there, but he can score from 3. He can create shots for himself and others with his playmaking ability. His defense is not bad by any means. Again, he's got good size for the position as well, so I think that B- defense will hold. He's a really good athlete. His IQ's not great, but he also has A- potential. The negatives for a guy like Monty McDaniel, he's 22 years old and he has no badges. But in terms of just ratings, I think he's the 5th best player in this class. I think, well, in terms of ratings, I think he's better than Dino Rancic right now. Of course, Rancic, of course, his badges, his age, and his higher potential are ultimately what pushes Rancic above Monty McDaniel in my ranking. But there are not, 10 players I would take over Monty McDaniel. Like his ratings say, not by a long shot. I think he is a top 5 talent in this class. The next guy I wanted to preview here was Vic Rhodes. I think he's the next best center, and I think he's got a very interesting skill set. A+ post defense and rebounding. He's 20 years old, has upside with him as well with that A- potential. In terms of a scorer, doesn't project to be a long-range shooter, but I think he can easily project to be somebody that inside the arc can actually be an asset offensively and not just this defensive guy. So I think you're getting a 2-way impact player. He's not the most versatile center. He's not, like the modern day big that can hit the threes, that can, switch everything, something like that. But he's a really, really good interior player. He has 4 badges as well. And I think I used the star rating system, which I will put on the screen right now, and I used that to kind of create my draft board, and so that's why Vic Rhodes is 8th. I don't know if I would actually have him 8th. I think I'd have him more in kind of the 6th range in this draft. And of course, with this star rating system, I don't use it quite as much as I do in like my Madden. I basically use it to help me sort my board and rank my board, because it's a lot harder for me to figure out if I like one player over another just by creating my draft board in 2K as it is in Madden. So I use this Google Sheet mostly to just help give me an idea of where I should draft somebody. I don't think it's, a doctrine that if somebody has a higher star rating than somebody else. This is very much so kind of a work in progress build of this Google Sheet. If you have any ideas as how we can improve this so we can get better draft boards in the future, let me know for sure. The link to this big board will be available in the description of this video. And yeah, so if you're wondering about how I came up with this order, this is the Google Doc that I used for it. So, but let's get back to kind of just the players here. And the next guy I want to talk about is actually very next, and it's going to be Roy Fields. A lot of the guys that we're going to be previewing are centers, and that's because I'll show you right now. Actually, it says that we haven't finished the lottery. Of course, we know that we did, but I'll show you. What was it? Oh yeah, this is what I wanted to show you. If you look at centers, Isaiah Hartenstein, 0 years left, and Goga Bidatse, and both of these guys are unwilling to sign with us. I don't know where you have to go to see their willingness to sign with you, but they're both unwilling to even entertain offers to come back. So both of the centers that were in our rotation last year, one of them, quote unquote, won disappointment of the year. Neither's got to be back with the team. We desperately need a center. And so a lot of the guys that we're going to preview on our board that are most likely to, come on our team are these centers, because we need to draft a center in this draft. We can't go in with Kai Jones as our best center next year. It's just not going to happen. And as you're going to be able to see here, I definitely have a type at center. I want guys who are really good at rebounding and can defend on the inside. I don't like mind stretch fives by any means, but if you're asking me, would I rather have a guy that can shoot at the center spot or can really rebound, I'm always going to choose the rebounder. I just think getting good rebounding at center is so important. Roy Fields projected to be a 78 overall, and he's projected to be a better scorer than Vic Rhodes. So I think there's certainly an argument to make that Roy Fields could be, the second best center in this class over a guy like Vic Rhodes. I have Vic Rhodes slightly higher. I think Fields, his potential isn't quite as high. He is older as well, and badge wise, he doesn't have any. And so those are why I would take Vic Rhodes first. It's kind of like a very similar argument to why I would have Dino Rancic over Monty McDaniel. Roy Fields is kind of like the center version of Monty McDaniel, while Vic Rhodes is kind of like the center version of Dino Rancic. And so I really like Roy Fields. Don't think he's going to be available for us, but like Vic Rhodes and Roy Fields are probably going to go too high in terms of considering a possible trade-off for a center. I really think it's got, as much as we're going to preview other really interesting prospects at other positions, we're taking center with our second pick. We're kind of pigeonholed into it. You don't love to be forced into a position, but here in year one with our second pick, we kind of are. Now, there is an argument that we could instead just take Darren Anthony at 1, but we're taking the hometown Sid the Kid Lowry. Next guy I want to preview because he's very interesting is Darius Floyd. He's an undersized wing as a shooting guard / small forward. I think his playmaking is at a spot where you could maybe make him a combo guard instead of a shooting guard / small forward, but the name of his game is his ability to shoot the heck out of the ball. A+ 3-point scoring with B mid-range. Now, he cannot score on the inside at all. F inside scoring. He also can't defend very well, but he's got A potential. So just a guy who could absolutely shoot the lights out. Combine that with the high upside is what makes Darius Floyd intriguing in this class. Another guy that's going to go way higher than we could ever trade up for, but he's definitely somebody that I'm going to be interested to see where he lands. His starting point at 73 overall isn't great. He does have 2 pretty good shooting badges as well that I think will help him for sure. And I imagine as he grows in his career, he's going to get a lot more in shooting badges. I don't think he's going to be much of an impact player anywhere else other than shooting, but he could end up being the best shooter in this class, although Sidney Lara, I think, has a really good chance at that as well. So, really good shooter with high upside. That was what makes him intriguing. The next guy I want to talk about is Guillermo Rodriguez. He is projected to come in at 78 overall, which for a guy you can get outside of the top 10 is a very, very high overall. The name of his game offensively is his ability to score in the mid-range. He's 21 years old. He can score a bit inside too. Doesn't quite have that three-point range. He's also more of an interior defender, but his perimeter defense isn't bad. C isn't bad at all. He doesn't have much playmaking ability. He's not going to be a great passer. He's not going to be a great dribbler. Solid rebounder. Really good athlete, but only B potential. So you have to wonder how much better he's going to get in his career. Has 2 badges, Pro Touch and Green Machine. I don't think those are super great badges, but he does have a couple of them. And so he's a very intriguing prospect. I'm curious to see where he goes because he does have that really high starting point, but there are so many players. I think he's the only guy in like my top 20 that has less than B plus potential. Again, it's a little bit less. It's B, right? And there's a chance that his ceiling is actually pretty high. So every player has 3 potential ratings, right? Their floor rating, their regular rating, and then their boom rating. And so I think the fact that you see All NBA here as his ceiling means that he has a very high boom potential, but that his regular potential isn't all that high. Guillermo Rodriguez, if I didn't need a center desperately in this class, I would be very intrigued by this player. And I'm curious to see where he goes for sure. Next guy I want to talk about is Wilson Fisher. We only have him at 99%, but 99% is enough to get a pretty good idea on him. He is a little bit undersized here, only 6'1", but he can shoot the 3, and he can really defend in this class. He's an excellent athlete. I guess he's not the only guy with only B potential because Fisher is 2. I guess I like the lower potential guys here in this class, but the guys that definitely have more of a ready now impact. That's kind of always been my style. Like if a guy's all potential but his early season impact looks really bad, I just don't really love drafting those guys nearly as much, at least in the first round, at least in the top 20, I'd say. Excellent athlete, incredible defender, 3 defensive badges. So even though he's undersized, I'm curious to see how a guy who's undersized but has the ratings and the badges to be a good defender, how that kind of balances out, and if he actually can be as good a defender as he promises to be. But gonna be able to shoot a bit, gonna be able to defend a lot. Wish he had better playmaking for a point guard, because he's too small to play shooting guard, but C plus playmaking isn't great for a point guard. That'd probably be my one knock on him. Can't score inside, can't play make very well, but still I think a really solid player. Now we're gonna go down the board a bit because those are the guys that are probably going ahead of our pick. Wilson Fisher might actually not, but I guess if all the centers are gone, we might take a guy like Wilson Fisher. There are 3 centers that I want to preview that project to be, there's actually 4, so I guess we'll preview 11 players instead of 10. Adelson Paulista was on my initial board, but we will preview him. There are 4 centers that have a chance to be available when we pick, or at least a small trade up away. I think we're gonna have to trade up into the mid-20s in this draft, would be my guess, to ensure that we get one of these centers. We're gonna go buy them one by one as they appear on our draft board, although like I said, this isn't doctrine. This is not the order I would actually draft them. Chase Miller would actually be my number 2 or 3. He's kind of like tied for 2 as to who I would like to draft with our second pick. He's got really solid inside the arc scoring. He's got really solid post defense and rebounding. Again, this is the build that I've been liking. He has 1 badge, Challenger, which is a pretty good badge for a center to have, I'd say. Kevin Duckworth's starter is his high-end range. Can get steals, great rim protector. He has that twice, so he should be a really good rim protector. Balance is only so-so is his only weakness. He is 22 years old. A lot of these guys are just old at what we're going to draft. That's just the sad reality of it. But, you know, it doesn't have anything that he's going to be super great at early, but he has some really projectable, like, 4 tool that he's going to be good in all 4 of these areas, which is a good 4 areas to be good at eventually. The question with these 22-year-olds is just how much are they going to improve, though, because a lot of guys peak start at like 24, and so you have 2 years of growth for Chase Miller. Is it going to reach that B+ potential? I would hope so, but you never know. The guy I actually want the most of all these centers is A.C. Stevens. Now, not quite as good offensively as we just saw from Chase Miller, but A+ rebounder, A post defense. He has the ability to be somebody that can come in next season and be a positive impact on the defensive side of the ball, which is kind of what we need. As much as I love upside in a player, whoever we draft here is going to start at center for us next year. Like I said, the 2 guys that we had playing in center last year, neither one is even going to entertain an offer to come back for us in the offseason. We need 2 new centers. One we're probably going to draft, the other we're probably going to get in UDFA. And so Stevens only has B potential. So of these guys, I think he has the lowest potential of the 3 that we're going to preview today, but I think he's the most ready to win now. Projects to be a 74 overall. I also really like that he's got 4 badges. He's also 21 years old, which I think is the youngest of the 4 centers that we're going to preview right now. So really like A.C. Stevens. In terms of his ceiling, he doesn't have the best ceiling, so you know his boot potential is not going to be very big. JaVale McGee, I'm fine with the JaVale McGee guy. The thing with Stevens is we could draft him and he might not even be our long-term starter. He might be a guy that starts and then eventually we get an upgrade for him. At center, I think he can play, you know, backup center really well as well, but I think he can start. Of all these guys, I think he's the most ready to start year 1, and that's what we really need from this pick, more than anything, if we're being honest. And so I like the prospects of adding A.C. Stevens. Now, the guy who's 4th on the list, who basically he's our last case scenario, but if we need to draft him, I would. He's the oldest prospect we're going to preview today, and he's the guy that's the stretch 5. He does have 3-point scoring ability, but like I stated previously, if I have to choose one between can you shoot the 3 and can you rebound, give me the 3-point shooting. He does have B+ potential, but he's also already 23, like I just said. So is he going to reach it? That's my big question with him. But I think we saw Goga take several 3s in our spotlight games. We saw Hartenstein take some 3s. There are opportunities for centers to shoot 3s in the playbook that we have. So having a guy that can shoot them is intriguing. I have to admit, I do like the idea of having a 3-point shooter. I just would rather have it, you know, while also not sacrificing rebound. Like a Darren Anthony. I think Darren Anthony would actually really thrive in our system should we take him number 1 overall. But maybe I should have kept the suspense and maybe not basically stated who I wanted to take so that you guys would have some intrigue more. But I just like I like Sidney Larry the most in this draft. And then the guy who's kind of like tied for 2nd for me with Chase Miller is Tyler Brown. He is the smallest guy here at 6'10", just 210 pounds. He's 22 years old, only has 1 badge. He doesn't have great post defense, but he is a good rebounder. But you see B+ potential. He's an elite S tier athlete. That's what allows him to play center at an undersized position. What makes him very intriguing is if you look at actually his ceiling, it's Dwight Howard All-NBA. So his, you know, medium potential is B+, but I think his boom potential is actually going to be pretty high if he has All-NBA ceiling. If you look at the player card, you'd probably say he maybe even looks the worst of the 4, but the reason he's bumped is because I think he has a pretty solid boom potential, and since he would start in year 1, I think he would have a very good chance of actually reaching his boom potential. He also has a really good starting out point at 76 overall, and touches to be something in this league, shot blocker and a rebounder, and then not going to be somebody you want with the ball in his hands all too often. Doesn't really have range to shoot. Yeah, he's not an outside shooter. He's not a playmaker. He's not even much of a perimeter defender. Not even that much of an interior defender, but he is fine there, and he's a great rebounder. He's a pretty good inside scorer. He's an S-tier athlete, and the potential is what really makes Tyler Brown intriguing. He's projected to go kind of maybe late lottery, so I don't know if he makes it. He's all the way down at 31 on our board. Like I said, I don't think he'd actually be 31. I think he'd be somewhere in the 20s on my board. But I think if he's available in the mid-20s, he'd be worth a trade up. Again, if AC Stevens is gone. He's the guy that I ultimately, at the end of the day, want to pick with my second pick in this draft more than anybody. Not as much upside, but I think where his badges are at, the fact that he's the youngest of these four centers that we previewed, and he's just the best defender and rebounder of these four as well. I think we'll take the fact that he's only okay offensively. I think Hartenstein really disappointed me. That's why he won Disappointment of the Year last year, of course, in terms of being a defensive center. He might have had maybe an unrealistic expectation because of Jalen Duren being the center of our other team, and he was obviously really good. I think AC Stevens has a chance to be a really good center as well, and so he is the guy that I would really like to come away with alongside Sidney Lowry in this class. But there are a lot of players that are really intriguing. Guys like, Gregory Anderson, he's rated really highly on our board despite being rated low in the draft overall. Only B potential, but what puts him high on our board is because he's one of the few young guys that actually looks good off of rip. As a 3-level scorer, I'd love to be able to take him if we can somehow get another second round pick. Gregory Anderson would be a solid pick. But there's more guys with B potential that in my top 15 than I thought there were. But especially somebody at 7th overall on the board. Again, this is the rating of this board is how it was rated by the star system, not necessarily how I would rank them. But I used the star system to rank my board because I felt like it was closer than what I was trying to do before I made my big board on the Google Doc. Everything was just all over the place, and I didn't actually know who I would take when. So this just gave me a starting point that I can kind of go off of come draft time. But that's going to conclude this episode. I'm really excited for the draft next episode, to see how it all shakes down, to see what ends up happening. That episode will be coming out soon, and I see you then.